What's more important to you when choosing a 360 camera? Image quality or price? Most of us would say image quality, but not everyone. And those people are who the Insta360 X4 Air was made for. This camera is just 165 grams, making it one of, if not the lightest 360 camera on the market right now. It's $399, which is significantly cheaper than its competitors, including Insta360's own cameras, and it has user replaceable lenses, which has quickly become a must-have, as well as a lot of the other great features and software that other Insta360 cameras have. However, it's also got a couple of red flags that you should be aware of. So in this video, I'll share my honest and unsponsored thoughts on Insta360's latest camera and do my best to answer the question of why this camera exists. If you find this video helpful, all I'd ask you to do is watch it right to the end to make YouTube's algorithm happy and give the video the best chance of getting seen by the most amount of people. I will also share my affiliate link to the X4 Air down below if you want to support my channel at no extra cost to you, if you decide you do actually want to buy this camera. So the first thing that's got to be said about this camera is X4 Air. Didn't they just release the X5? Shouldn't it be the X5 Air? Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Seems like a weird choice, but I did actually ask Insta360 about this, and they told me that the X4 Air is supposed to be somewhere between the X4 and X5 in terms of the features and image quality of the camera. If it were me, I would have called it X5 Air, but each to their own. Essentially, though, you should think of this camera like a low-budget X5. And let's talk about price. It's $399, which is an extremely good price for a camera that is so capable. At the time of making this video, the X5 is priced at $549. The X4 is at a regular price of $499. The GoPro Max 2 is $499 USD, and the DJI Osmo 360 is $549 USD, although it depends where you are. This is the price in the US, whereas other countries, here I've set it to Singapore, it will be closer to $440 USD. So the X4 Air definitely has the edge price-wise by at least $40, again depending on which country you live in. And with that said, you should definitely manage your expectations of this camera. Here it is up close, and it's a design we're very familiar with at this point, which is a vertical camera design with a lens on either side, a big vertical screen on one side. However, this time they've simplified the button system to just one button here on the front, as well as the on button and quick settings buttons on the side as it was before. And believe it or not, I'm a fan of this single button on the front because it keeps things simple. You don't really need a second one there. So that's actually a win in my books. On the other side, you've got the battery, which is the same battery design as previous cameras, where it's built in and you can eject it to access the SD card slot. It's got microphones all the way around it, including this wind guard here on the back side. And in case you hadn't noticed, it also comes with replacement lenses, which makes it the third 360 camera to come with replacement lenses after the X5 and GoPro Max 2. So that's definitely a welcome addition to this camera. The lenses are smaller, however, than the X5, and they don't look quite as good quality. So time will tell whether it really is that much of a downgrade or not, but regardless, having replaceable lenses is a massive win for the X4 Air. Here the two cameras are side by side. As you can see, the X4 Air is slightly shorter, as well as being roughly the same thickness. On the screen side, however, you'll notice a bit of a difference here. The X5 screen is much bigger and better than the X4 Air's screen, and you'll notice that the X4 Air also has a bigger bezel around the screen, which means there's less swipeable space on the actual screen. So expect navigation to be slightly harder than it is on the X5. However, it shouldn't be too bad. Now, one of the main points of differentiation of the X4 Air versus the X5 is the weight. The X4 Air comes in at 165 grams, whereas the X5 is 200 grams. So that's a difference of 35 grams. Whether that's a meaningful amount to you is subjective based on the types of videos you like to shoot. I'd say in the hand, yes, the difference is noticeable, but it's not huge. So this is probably something that people who shoot action type shots will appreciate more. Maybe you're trying to mount this to your body or a helmet. It's just going to be a little bit lighter and cause you less fatigue. However, I will say that while these two cameras are on the opposite side of the spectrum weight-wise, there is a third option, and that is the Osmo 360. Which comes in roughly at a weight that is somewhere in between the two cameras. So if you found the X5 too heavy and wanted to change to something lighter, I wouldn't necessarily go to the X4 Air straight away, since the Osmo 360 is still really light and better in other ways. Just keep in mind though that it's the only one of the three that doesn't have replaceable lenses. I tested the X4 Air for overheating on a mixed light day here in Sydney. There was a bit of clouds and a bit of sun, and I was able to record 8K 360 video for 1 hour and 26 minutes. I came back the next day where it was even sunnier and then recorded for 1 hour 28 minutes. And neither time did the camera actually overheat, but rather it just stopped because the battery ran out, which confirms that the battery life is indeed around an hour and a half. If you were to shoot continuously in that time, but again, if you turn it off in between shots, it will last a bit longer. Take these numbers with a grain of salt though, because if you're in a much hotter climate, then the camera is going to be more likely to overheat sooner. One more quick thing about the design, and that is that I noticed it marks pretty easily. I don't know if you can see, there's like a little scratch there. I don't even know what happened. I haven't dropped it or scratched it against anything. This is just from standard use. It almost feels like the material is a little bit on the cheaper side when it comes to plastic that is used in the camera, whereas something like an X5 probably has a better build quality because they're putting more money into the actual build versus cutting costs with the X4 Air, and that results in cheaper plastic that is likely to mark a bit easier. Another place they cut costs to make this camera so cheap is in the sensor. As you would expect with a camera like this, it's not going to have the same size sensor as the main model, and therefore I calculated it to be roughly 44% smaller than that of the X5. And of course, this is going to have an effect on image quality, which we'll see in a bit. Now, something else that comes from having lower specs is less ability to achieve the different kinds of things that the X5 was previously able to achieve, and this comes specifically in the resolutions and shooting modes. So if I scroll through both of their menus, you'll notice that some things are different. For example, there's no pure video with the X4 Air. There's also no bullet time option, and this is because X4 Air doesn't go very slow with its frame rates. And as I scroll through the modes, there are definitely some differences here in what is available with the X4 Air that used to be available with the X5. Here are the resolutions side by side, so they both do 8K 30. Then the X4 Air does 6K, whereas the X5 does 5.7K plus and 5.7K. Then both cameras do 4K, however, X4 Air only goes up to 50 frames a second, whereas X5 goes up to 120, aka slow motion. So when shooting 8K 360 video in broad daylight, the X4 Air produces a pretty good result that is somewhat similar to other cameras, especially when you keep your shots wide and the lighting's good. It comes with all the same things the other 360 cameras have, like perfect stabilization and invisible selfie stick, which is to be expected in 2025. However, when you zoom in too far, like you'll see here with the pylon of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, suddenly you'll notice a lot of noise and artifacts even in the middle of the day. These won't be visible from a wider perspective, but if you plan on doing any level of zoom, you should expect these imperfections. It's also the first Insta360 camera to allow active HDR in their 8K 30 shooting mode. And as you can see here, with active HDR combined with adaptive tone, the dynamic range of this shot looks significantly better on the right-hand side. While the camera doesn't have any kind of significant slow motion mode, it does shoot at 6K 50 FPS, and this can be used either for playing back at regular speed, like this boat shot here, to capture movement that extra bit better, and of course it can be slowed down 50% to slow motion, which isn't super slow, but it's slow enough to have a slow motion feel, and you know what? This shot really isn't that bad. good. In fact, I'd even say it's more than good enough for basic slow-mo shots. It's just the really slow frame rates like 100 or 120 FPS that you won't be able to do. It's got this new mode called portrait mode where it targets your face to try and lighten it up a bit, and the difference here is really marginal, but it's nice that they're adding features like this to help achieve better exposure on faces. In mixed lighting, it's pretty good as well. The auto exposure does take a few seconds to fully catch up, especially when you're going from outside to inside or vice versa, but overall it does a good enough job. Now, one of the major weaknesses of the X4 Air is low light. Because of the smaller sensor size, it does not perform anywhere near the level of the other 360 cameras right now. This shot here is just usable, but it's lacking sharpness and it's a bit blurry and grainy, especially when you stop and pixel peep it. So if you shoot at nighttime a lot, I wouldn't recommend this camera. This is a sound test with the Insta360 X4 Air. How does it sound? Can you hear my voice clearly? Or is it absolutely crap? Let me know what you think down below. This is a sound test on a windy day. I'm testing to see which of the three cameras has the best inbuilt sound. Is it the DJI Osmo 360? Is it the Insta360 X5? Or is it the new Insta360 X4 Air? Here it is side by side with two of its competitors, the Osmo 360 and the X5. And in terms of dynamic range, all three are doing a pretty good job. I think the Osmo 360 is probably doing the best here. However, the other two aren't too far behind, and I definitely think the X4 Air performs well enough in bright daylight. Here's another one, and again, the Osmo 360 has the best dynamic range. If you look at this bright area of the sidewalk, it's blown out with the Insta360 cameras, but the Osmo handles it nicely. Here's a detailed test, and while the background looks pretty similar between the three of them, the foreground is a different story. You'll see the X4 Air looks a bit softer around the bushes, whereas the other two look much sharper. And when I punch in, that absolutely confirms it, that I think the Osmo 360 looks slightly sharper than the other two, but as you can see, the foreground here is pretty soft with the X4 Air. While all three cameras are technically 8K, you'll notice that the lens design and the sensors do make a big difference when looking at them side by side. When I punch into 300%, it looks like the quality around my face is just a bit worse with the X4 Air. It's still a bit grainy here with the Osmo, and the X5 has this overly smoothing algorithm going on. So each of them definitely have their flaws, but at the same time, they are all absolutely usable in broad daylight. Here they are at nighttime, just so you can see how bad the X4 Air is compared to the other two. It's much darker, much grainier, and again, I just wouldn't use this at nighttime. So this is why they say comparison is the thief of joy. If you just looked at the first shots, you'd think, hey, this camera's actually pretty good and these shots are great. But then in comparison to the other two, suddenly it's a bit inferior, not as good quality, it's grainier, not quite as sharp. So yeah, again, they're dropping the price to $150 less than the other two, so that's got to show up somewhere, and unfortunately that place is the image quality. When it comes to photo modes, it's a similar story. The X4 Air is now only able to shoot 29 megapixels, whereas X5 can shoot 72, both of which have inbuilt HDR options and RAW. In terms of photos, it actually does a pretty good job. I think you could totally use this firstly for casual 360 shots that you reframe for Instagram and so on, but also for interactive 360 virtual tours. This can totally be used as a low budget virtual tour camera if you use it smartly by utilizing the inbuilt HDR and pure shot modes. Now, as is the case with every new Insta360 camera that comes out, one massive benefit that it will get by default is having a really fast and well optimized workflow, where the desktop software and mobile app have been developed for 10 years now and are now at a point where stitching and reframing is fast, intuitive, and easy, especially if you compare it to the other cameras like the Osmo 360 and GoPro Max 2 that only have a bare bones reframing system. And this is absolutely something you should consider when buying a 360 camera. It's not just about the image quality, but it's about the overall workflow and process you go through to get your shots from the camera into a usable video file. So why does this camera exist? Well, clearly Insta360 wanted to make a camera camera that was on the more budget side of the market, so they could appeal to people who only want to spend a few $100s and nothing more. Of course, with that you get lower image quality, but that's actually okay for a lot of people who are just shooting casual shots and just want something that is good enough to post. From what I understand, the X3 and X4 are still selling very well for Insta360, so it makes sense why they would be targeting this market. So good for them, I guess. However, it is unfortunately a bit disappointing for us who have been in the game for a long time and are still waiting for a 1-inch sensor 360 camera with resolution slightly higher than 8K as well as 10-bit and you know the rest. We've been waiting for this camera and it hasn't come, unfortunately. Maybe it will with the X6, time will tell. So should you buy the X4 Air? Well, I think if you totally ignore the comparisons in this video and evaluate it on whether it can do a good enough job at capturing 360 video that looks really good and is totally usable, as well as features like the replaceable lenses and the fact that it's really light so it could be mounted to a helmet easily or anywhere else, maybe on your body or elsewhere, then this is something you should totally consider. But if you prefer better image quality, then unfortunately I have to say that the X5 beats it in nearly every way. It's got better dynamic range, sharpness, it's still got the same great workflow, and even though yes, it is more expensive and a little heavier, it really is a fantastic 360 camera for any serious content creator. It's worth mentioning that at the time of launch, it's not available in the US because they're still apparently waiting on FCC approval. That's due to the government shutdown, and that could be a few more weeks, maybe a month or two, I'm not sure. But this definitely isn't the same thing as DJI's problem, who are struggling to get this camera through customs, hence it's still not for sale in the US months. I think we're like 3 months after launch now, and you still can't buy it in the US. To my friends in the US, I'm sorry. Anyway, what did you think about the X4 Air? Let me know down below. And if you're considering either the Osmo 360 or the X5, check out my reviews here where I evaluate them in detail to tell you whether they're worth buying or not.